on my block for about 20 years. Never been a single piece of graffiti in my neighborhood until 2020.
Welcome to a special edition of the Waxcast without Gavin Wax. I'm your guest host, Congressman MattGaetz. Honored to be here at the New York Young Republican Club Clubhouse with two of the people I'm closest with on the planet Earth. My fiance, Ginger Lucky, one of my best friends, the vice president of this club, Vish Burra. Vish, tell us the significance of being in this space at this time, in this moment.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for taking over the Waxcast. Sometimes I get tired of a pasty white Jewish boy that kind of just rambles on.
So instead they get a pasty Southern Baptist boy to ramble on.
It's an easy transition.
But still great hair. That is really the essence of the Waxcast.
Exactly. The host has to have a great hair, a great head of hair. Make sure that's a requirement, Gavin. So I can never host, obviously.
Yeah, but you've got the beard that makes you look like you should be on some sort of no-fly list.
Yeah, definitely African warlord status. But the significance of this right here podcast today is this is the first podcast that we've ever recorded in this clubhouse. This clubhouse is actually kind of our way of showing the reemergence of the club. After 60, 70 years of kind of doldrums, we used to have multiple clubhouses. And they were all gone as sort of the power of the club dwindled. But now that it's back on the rise with your help, the great support of all the members of the club and all the non-members who do come, we were able to bring back a clubhouse into our presence. And so this is huge. Having a safe zone in the middle of Manhattan for guys like us to do this, I think it's a huge deal.
So just the other night, a big social function here, had some of the local politicos running for office. You also just had a lot of young people that remained energized and enthusiastic about coming together, sharing their views. Ginger, how would you rate the little soiree we had here the other night?
It was awesome because it wasn't a big Coachella type moment, but especially coming out of pandemic, you felt like the New York energy and also just good energy, similar to a Trump rally. Maybe not everyone is there for the same reason, but it's just a really good, fun energy. So
positive, and that's what I enjoyed so much about it, and honored to be able to grace the podcast platform here and to be able to have our first inaugural podcast from the clubhouse, but I'm certain that it'll be one of many that we see. So unless you've been living under a rock for the last several weeks, they have been unique, certainly for me, for my family, for my constituents. And I definitely wanted to take the opportunity to thank the great people of Northwest Florida, of my state of Florida, and just the MAGA nation at large for having my back, and know that I will always have yours. Now, there's something special about this assembly of humans we've got here. We got Florida represented, California represented, New York. If we had a Texan, we'd pretty much have the whole country. But just I know you guys, constantly in touch with people from your home states. Ginger, what is the vibe right now in California? Is it starting to open up? Are you starting to see that reemergence? Is there still that innovative dynamic that you saw during the lockdowns where businesses were just trying to do anything they could to have maybe outdoor seating, maybe more of the use of apps to get their food and beverage product out to people? What's the vibe? What's the feel in Cali real Californians never say Cal. Can't say that.
Cali.
Right.
Gives it away.
Whatever it is, is it the Golden State? The Golden State. That's what Katy Perry called it.
Yeah.
What's the vibe?
I would say California was really lucky because even during the lockdowns, right, we still have great weather. So it's not like we weren't able to actually adapt to the outside dining. So it's definitely coming back in different pockets. It's totally alive again. You go to Orange County, California, there are no masks. I'm surprised that anyone there is getting vaccinated. But slowly but surely, I think a lot of the businesses, though, are really so tired of the back and forth, right? Because we never really locked down in a way that New York, you're used to winters, right? You guys have to get inside, watch the movies. In California, we just don't do that. Even if it rains, we don't even know where to eat because there's not the infrastructure to go from the parking garage into the, restaurant. So I would say
earthquakes, no problem. Rain, they're ready to call the National Guard in California.
you can't prepare for earthquakes, right? You know, I mean, you have the building codes, but other than that, if it happens, it happens. You adapt, and that's what you do. But it's definitely coming back. But you feel it from the business owners getting really frustrated on the 25% capacity. It's just why we had to shut down, open up. People think that they are going to have a job back, and then it's so. I think the frustration is there, but all in all, it's definitely coming back, and people are ready for it.
So my friend Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, was always on the front end of pushing back on these claims that some of these public health officials were making, where they would just say, oh, well, the magic number is 50% capacity or 75% capacity or this many feet or this many people. And it always seemed to be more a desire of those people to exercise jurisdiction than really driven in some of the numbers. We're not scientists. You're a financial expert, and so I want to ask you to offer a medical opinion, Ginger. But do you think that people of California trust the pronouncements from public health officials, or do you think that there is greater scrutiny in the kind of back nine of this pandemic?
Yeah, I would never pick out the word trust to use with how California, I think, feels towards their leadership.
Or anything, their marriages,
right?
Whatever.
But that's part of the thing, right? You're always trying to do something a little bit smarter, a little bit better, a little bit different. Still, all in, good, positive, fun times. But I don't think that trust would be a word that is that's used there.
So Vish, the New York vibe, it feels different to Ginger and I now than even several weeks ago when we were last here. Folks are out and about more. It seems like more businesses are starting to pry their doors open against tyrannical governments that they have to confront on a daily basis at the municipal and at the state level. Is it just that the weather's getting warmer and people are out stretching their arms a bit, or is there really a renewal of New York that, if not fully underway, is at least in its embryonic stage?
I think there's going to be a revival of New York. It's the length, or how long it takes is really the question that I think everyone's sort of wrangling with. I think what you see right now is that we remember President Trump talking about that pent up energy, that demand, that as soon as everything opens up, that the economy was going to skyrocket. I think here you're really seeing that, because the lockdowns here were very intense. We had no indoor dining during the winter. Right? I mean, during the dead of winter. So that is, and once you shut down New York in this manner, people don't come here to pay all these high taxes and property taxes and crazy costs for everything to not have a social life, right? Everyone comes here to have a social life and works here and lives in shoebox style apartments so they can hang out somewhere else later, right? And so that is what drives this culture here. And if that culture is not fostered, and obviously there's new ways that we can expand upon the brand. There's always new ways, but right now you got to take care of what makes this place work. People need to go out, party, have fun, go to restaurants and get this economy back to life. There's been numerous businesses that are, some of them hundreds of years old that are done now because of the pandemic. That's the history that's gone. And so we need to be able to at least replace them with businesses that work and businesses that have the energy behind them ready to go post-pandemic.
Well, so many of your former New Yorkers are now my fellow Floridians. Yeah, exactly. They've come to the Sunshine State.
We want them back.
Well, I tell you, if they vote blue, we may send you a few back. But for the time being, the dominant political question of the day doesn't really seem to be about taxes, though Joe Biden is talking about doubling the capital gains taxes. It doesn't seem to be about healthcare, even though no party really seems to have a healthcare plan right now. The dominant political question of the day is freedom. Your freedom to be able to move around without a vaccine passport, your freedom to be able to operate your business, your freedom to not have to document every moment of every day. And it'll be interesting to see how America answers that question. Now, Ginger has friends abroad in Europe, and I was amazed to hear how that experience compares to ours. Share a moment about just what you're hearing kind of in correspondence from people over there and how they perceive the different approaches from the states like California, New York, and Florida.
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing going in, into the winter months, being able to, shut down. But one of my best friends from France, I mean, they could only go out for an hour a day with a note saying what time they left, what they were leaving for, what they were getting. Like an hour. Can you imagine that? An hour. That's
absurd.
That's prison. That's the definition of what some of the prison systems do. So, and even now, I mean, they have to be back by 6 p.m. All restaurants and groceries are closed. So if you're hungry past a certain time, it's just, and so them looking to the States, especially a place like Florida, where I moved from California to Florida, and just saying, wait a minute, I've seen your stories. It seems like your life is normal. Like you're just doing normal things, and I'm super appreciative for what Governor DeSantis did. But them seeing that and not even being able to recognize that could be happening, and them just really hunkered down in a way that I can't imagine an hour a day.
Now, Ginger had one of these like very mask adherent friends come visit us, and we went out for a little bit of dancing and a little bit of live music, and she wore her mask. And we told her she could keep it on if what occurred.
I said, if you can find one other person wearing a mask, you can keep it on. And after a while, she's like, I've just found a chin mask. It's really not even one. So I'm just
what is the statement of the chin mask, Vish? The person that cares enough to wear the mask, but has it as like the ear dangle or like the chin understrap.
It's literally, one of my pet peeves, indecisiveness. Just commit. Keep it on or take it off.
Deep, vicious cutting right to the quick.
Yeah, that's what it is, man. I don't that you got. If you're in, you're in. If you believe the mask is going to protect you, wear the mask. Fine. But.
So on the floor of Congress, there are parliamentarians whose job it is now to walk up to members and say, "Well, your mask isn't completely over your nose." And I'm sitting there thinking, what the hell? We just voted on a string of like 13 Democrat bills that we didn't even get to cast individual votes on. Like the parliamentarians will allow these issues to get bundled up and boxed up and log rolled to deprive the American people of having representative government individually review actual policies, but they'll show up and be the mask Nazi if it slips a few, inches below your nostrils, I guess.
I mean, it's another version, another form of that anarcho-tyranny that we're talking about, where essentially our leaders, our elites are allowing criminals to burn down cities, yet they come and poke you about mask mandates and ordinances on capacity and stuff. That's the kind of insane clown world policing that we're in now, where if the state is just going to make these rules and enforce them whether they make sense or not, but where people actually need help, like safety in their streets and healthcare and stuff like that, that is just left to the wolves.
Well, we got to talk now about an issue in the news. A former Florida man having some beef with current Florida man Donald Trump. Of course, I'm talking about the California resident now, LeBron James. Now, you wanted LeBron here in New York. You rolled out the red carpet for LeBron in New York. Yes. And after he kind of like took his talents to South Beach, went to Miami, won some championships, went home to Cleveland. I think that was largely driven by his wife desiring to have child rearing there, which is great. And then Hollywood LeBron is now Mr. Political figure, Mr. Social justice figure. How do you rate the current LeBron-Trump beef, Vish?
I mean, I love... I wear LeBron's. I respect his game a lot.
So,
but yeah, I mean, he's just amazing, right? But once he gets into the political stuff, and you're gonna go with a heavyweight like Donald Trump, who won the presidency, right? Like, you got to make sure all your P's and Q's are in line. And I don't think that LeBron, for all his talents, was able to conquer the world of basketball.
You don't? So who in the Vish basketball sphere do you have above LeBron? Who do you look at and say
Kobe? God rest his soul.
You put Kobe over LeBron?
Yes, I do.
I second that.
Yeah. Really? Is it like recency bias?
No, it's the clutch factor. It's the same reason why I like Tom Brady. I don't care how you play, 3/4 of the game. Do you close in the fourth, right? That's kind of
well, if you're a guy who's right in the clutch factor, where do you put Michael Jordan?
Michael Jordan is also up there, right? That's the
rank those three on clutch factor alone.
Clutch factor alone.
You got one possession. Mm-hmm. It's the end of the game. Mm-hmm. You can give the ball to LeBron, Kobe, or Michael. I'm giving it to Michael.
Okay.
You giving it to Kobe, Ginge?
I'm just here for the Lakers girls, all right? That's what I'm.
Me and Ginge always end up on the same team somehow
That's
against
what
Matt.
well, how LeBron is kind of a new California resident, but you're a Southern California girl. Has the state taken to LeBron?
I think it's hard when you're in I mean, we can't even show up for games, right? So you can't have the same type of energy. So, and then also, I mean, California, things that we're not known for, being really into sports. You know, we have the teams, but like, you know, fall football is something that we do, you know, maybe as we're in wine country or surfing or skiing, not necessarily, you know, what we take over entire weekends for. So it's just it's different in California with sports.
I think the Trump-LeBron beef is good for both of them. I think that for LeBron, it is good to, develop depth to his perspective and his engagement. And I think it's good for Trump to still be seen as kind of the masthead for a pushback against wokeness and reactionary politics.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, LeBron had to take down a tweet where he essentially doxed a cop who's been charged with no crime and who does not deserve to have his family and the rest of his life defined by a LeBron James tweet.
Right.
And LeBron takes that down. I think probably some people around him recognized that was inadvisable. And who among us hasn't occasionally had a tweet that they've had to take down? I think that we all ought to extend grace on social media. Yeah. I think when someone makes a mistake and they correct it, we all have to recognize that's part of the human experience. But I think we're going to see more of this. I think Trump has a great instinct for what fights to pick. Yeah. And there is a reason he was picking this fight with LeBron.
It actually kind of reminds me, there's something to be said about that point. If you remember the big 50 Cent Kanye West beef over like when they released I think they both released their album in the same day, and their little competition was who was going to sell more. I think Kanye ended up outselling 50, but no shrinking flowers.
Wait, if you could only buy 50. One of those two albums, which do you buy?
Oh, Kanye's.
Heartless?
I agree as well.
No, it wasn't Heartless.
It
was what's his second one? Graduation.
Oh, okay.
Diamonds Are Forever. That song bumps, baby. Come on.
Yeah. To Kanye. See, you and Vish always voting on the same side.
I mean, we're right a lot.
We vibe.
Yesterday was Earth Day, and Ginger knows a lot about the environment, and I believe that America First has to embrace environmentalism politically. I don't think that we can say that this is our home, this is a special place, this is a unique place in all of human history, and then let people come and trash our home and leave it filthy in squalor. To be America First, we have to want America to be splendid. And I do believe that that means we need to use more renewable energy. Now, I don't think the government ought to become a venture capitalist. I think it kind of sucks that we've got an electric grid that leaks like a sieve. Mm-hmm. If we built out our electric grid, if we leveraged public and private capital to do that, we would be able to accommodate more renewables. And you know who it would help? Working people. They would ultimately see energy costs that were lower, that would be more sustainable for them. And it would, I think, be the best way to be the best version of ourselves. What I don't agree with is this Green New Deal concept where we're going to offshore all of the dirty jobs, deprive the American people of economic growth, watch China and India take advantage of us, and then somehow act like we've done this great thing when pollution will rise and our people will suffer. That is not the way to have practical environmentalism. So Ginger, like as you kind of frame up things that people ought to do or be cognizant of here in the wake of Earth Day, what would be your advice?
Yeah, there's two things that immediately come to mind, because I think the first thing that no one really talks about, but it's greenwashing, right? Like what are we measuring? How are we measuring it? And right now we don't have a standard way or even any ways for doing a lot of these things. A lot of it's emotional driven, right? We've all seen Greta talk about the environment, but with the greenwashing that's going on right now, like that's what we need to solve first, or else you just can't make good informed decisions on a bad data set.
So when you're talking about greenwashing, it's this woke corporatism that puts out that they have engaged in these environmentally sustainable practices, but it's really just a veneer. It's just a virtue signal in the absence of real, solid, effective practice. Is that definitionally what we're talking about?
I wouldn't define it quite like that, because I think they are trying, right? Everyone is trying, but they just
Well, are they trying to help the environment, or are they trying to help their corporate brand?
Both, because you build brand trust if you know that your brand is looking out for the environment. So these environments, and that's my second point was actually going to be, it is not just on a corporate level, right? You have to tackle it from a personal level, whether it's, food waste at home, or the corporate levels, because they know that they can actually have these, huge dollars behind things to maybe even come up with a system on how to track these things. So we're not greenwashing. So I don't know that it's I wouldn't define it as woke, but I mean, that's going to be so different per corporation. I'm sure it's a mix of people wanting to show that they care. They don't really know how, but yeah, at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff that's coming out saying, this shirt was made from 14 plastic water bottles. They don't tell you about what it went into that. Is there actually a net zero emissions after that? Probably not. You probably put way more environmental harm making that shirt than the, just buying a regular shirt. So those are the things where, yes, I think that the way that you defined it, I'm sure that's going on, but I think it's a balance. I think businesses are trying, and they know it's important. They know it's important to us. We all just don't know how to do it yet. Because
so then what's the sin of greenwashing? If they're trying, what is the greenwashing offense that the consumer ought to be able to look out for? So I think
in a malicious way, greenwashing is how you defined it, right? It is, hey, we're doing X things, and this is the benefit, and maybe it's really not because, they're not telling you about the other thing that it actually did. On the other hand, I do think that greenwashing is just people not knowing how to measure it yet, right? This is all new, and it's on a very macro level, and everything we're doing is, it's hypotheticals, right? If we do this grid thing, if we do clean water, if we do, this could be the impact, but it's all, it's all a model. It's all a data set. Do we have good data?
So Vish, your fellow New Yorker, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, gave a number of fiery speeches this last week in and around Earth Day, and she talked with some particularity about the intersectionality of climate change. Mm-hmm. Racial injustice is climate change. Corporate injustice is climate change. That every grievance can somehow be linked back to this dynamic. And her solution set for that is to centralize control in Washington, D.C., with a lot of federal agencies, and to dole out freedom with the environment as the basis for that paradigm. Mm-hmm. How do New Yorkers see it? I just wonder, I know that AOC has this national brand, one might even say global brand, around her version of populism. There are times she and I fight real hard against one another. There are times we actually work closely together on issues of drug reform, on issues of, at times, war and peace, where we don't want to see America engaged in these forever unconstitutional wars. But here in New York, where we've talked about freedom being kind of the essence to the rebirth, and where green space isn't exactly part of daily life the way it might be out in other parts of America, are people really here for the Green New Deal?
I think that people here, it's like that greenwashing sort of aspect of like corporate America. It's the same way people here, like they want to, get behind the right thing, and like environmentalism on its face like sounds good, and they're in for that message, but they kind of don't understand like what they're voting for is like affecting people that live a lifestyle that is dependent on the environment. Like, what do people in New York City really know about the environment versus like people in Louisiana who actually deal with the environment and live off the environment, right? And so I think their concern is genuine, but they're misguided because
that's people. What you're saying is it's a different nexus of the experience.
Yeah.
Right. Ginger and I, as Floridians, we love sailing. So the water being clean to us is an important thing because we are going to go be in it, right, swimming and splashing around.
Exactly.
Whereas here in New York, the connection with the environment might be more esoteric, right, and not as direct.
Exactly. They're voting for a symbol, right? The symbol of like cleanliness, but people in Louisiana and Florida vote for the environment through practicality, right?
And in a lot of ways, that's the inverse of the AOC localism that I admire so much at times. Right. What I appreciate about Alex in her best moments, it's when she's fighting for the wages of her people, when she was fighting against Amazon coming in and crushing local businesses, right, and changing the dynamic of her community. But on the environment, like localism would say, how about get the rats out of my trash,
right,
on the street I live in, before sort of solving the polar bear question.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And, a lot of New Yorkers, left and right, I hear their reactions or their hot takes on AOC. I think that they kind of they miss the signal for the noise. She's a really hard worker and she has the right populist instincts. And there's something to be said about that, and there's something there to appreciate. We should be looking for ways to work with populists on the other side of the aisle, even, especially when we have folks that are on our team, supposedly on our team, like Mr. McConnell and, some of these never Trump folks, Liz Cheney, your favorite, right? We have to look for alliances with Americans. At the end of the day, they are Americans, and we should be looking to work with them. So.
Totally. And on so many of the battles that we face, it's not the red team versus the blue team.
Right.
It's the establishment against the rest of us.
Exactly.
And that's one reason, by the way, we should not all be so eager to cancel each other. Right. Because if you have to cancel someone because they disagree or they've exceeded your norms and bounds on one issue, well, then you've deprived yourself of the operational capability, to be able to go and work with that person and to engage in that type of stuff. Now, at the New York Young Republican Club event that we were at, just great energy, young people, exciting time. A young woman came up to me and said, I want to help candidates that might not come out of the traditional establishment Republican ecosystem. Mm-hmm. How do I do that? And I explained that really the Justice Democrats on the left that emerged with a lot of operational capability here in New York, that they flipped the script. See, the way the Justice Democrats do this is like producing a movie. First, they get the script, then they go finance the script, and when all that's done, they go and get the actors or the candidates. Whereas as Republicans, we often sit back and say, well, who's got money? Who's got resources? And then how can we kind of build a script or a story around them? If we are going to continue to be an America First party that doesn't sell out to cheap foreign goods or cheap foreign labor or special interests in our own country, I think we have to repopulate the Congress with those more non-traditional candidates or candidacies, and we got to build a new class of firebrands. So, present company excluded, obviously. Ginger, as you've kind of hung out with members of Congress and seen them engage in their work, is there kind of a non-traditional firebrand on the rise that you look to and say that's a model that Republicans should look at with greater care?
Someone that immediately comes to mind, Lauren Boebert.
She's amazing.
Absolute star. So fun to hang out with, down to earth, gets things done. She's a mom. Everything about her, I could hang out with her. I would go on a girls trip with her. And I also would expect that if I had to have the biggest, event of my life, that she could also handle it. And she's just, I would vocalize Lauren Boebert for sure.
All right, Vish, who's a firebrand on the rise you got your eye on?
I am totally in love with Queen MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is a national treasure.
Yes, she is. And just the amount of sort of pressure that the corporate media and it being stripped, even attempting to strip her of her committee assignments, and that fire that she faced with such grace and steadfastness, that's something you can't teach. Mm-hmm. And so that's the medal, right? The resolve. Right, exactly. That again, Tom Brady in the fourth, right? Kobe with the ball in his hands with 3 seconds on the clock. That's what I see in MTG. And so that is what I really like what she's doing, and I have a very, very bright hope for her future.
Marjorie Taylor Greene got more votes than a vast majority of the Democrats that were working to remove her from her committee assignment. And you just think to yourself, the nerve, right, of these people assembled in Washington, D.C. to tell the people of North Georgia what type of representation they should have.
Well, I can expect the Democrats to do that and be that. That's fine. I am very, very upset that our fellow Republicans also voted with Democrats to have her stripped of her committee assignments, namely my Representative Congresswoman Malliotakis, who voted to have her stripped.
Listen, we either hang together or we hang separate on these things. We saw what the mainstream media did to Donald Trump. We see what the mainstream Republicans and Democrats try to do to Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the country sees what folks in big media are trying to do to me right now. Exactly. And there is a commonality and a thread to it and a viciousness to it that frankly, the Democrats and the media probably have more than we do. Because when we take the majority again, which we will, I don't think we'll have the guts to strip Maxine Waters of her committee assignments, even though she's out there actively calling for violence and intimidation against members of Congress, against administration officials, even against a jury that is sitting in a case where someone's life is at stake. And it shows, I think, to some degree, the effectiveness of Nancy Pelosi. Whatever you want to say about Nancy Pelosi, she is a hardworking, effective woman who keeps her team together. And it shows Republicans that I think we got to fight a lot harder, especially when we get power. I mean, when we had the presidency, the Senate, and the House, we had made one fundamental promise to the people of the country, that we would repeal Obamacare. And then we didn't. And then the other major promise we made to the country was that we were going to secure the border. And Trump just had a Herculean effort in that regard. And thank goodness he did, because McConnell and Paul Ryan never had his back. What did they want? Tax cuts. And I'm glad we had tax cuts. I'm glad that we did things that could improve the economy of our country. It's sad that Joe Biden wants to take us the other direction and now has got this plan to double the capital gains tax. But it was always interesting for me to see what the establishment was willing to fight for and what they weren't willing to fight for. And when it came to the issues that I think really galvanized our movement, build the wall, we didn't see that same level of vigor. I mean, no one was out there at these rallies chanting, cut my taxes. But at the same time, that does appeal to a lot of people in the middle. I mean, Ginger, you're a financial analyst. You, I think, look at a lot of these policy questions from a utilitarian point of view. The Trump tax cuts seem to appeal to a group of people beyond just the Trump base. Share your perspective on how you think that economic message can grow our movement.
I think especially because as a business, I know specifically a lot of businesses that probably vocally didn't like Trump were thrilled because once he actually made that change on the business taxes, to not have to make the decision to keep your taxes in the United States as a big business, very rare, right? Everyone, they find the loopholes because they're smart enough and they hire the right people to make sure that they have the tax havens. So to have all of that, I don't think anyone even realizes what a macro amount that is to keep, and if you're America first and actually pulling all of that tax back in, even, at a lower rate, I mean, that's massive. That is massive. And I don't think anyone, has done the modeling and came out with a propelling case saying if these amount of businesses weren't offshoring taxes, what that would mean like and where that tax money could actually go and make a difference.
Well, let me make a policy prediction that at the end of the day, Biden won't have the juice to legislatively get a ton of tax increases done, maybe some here and there, but that they are going to fuel the largesse of government, not with tax policy, but with monetary policy. They're going to print so much damn money. There's going to be so much cash out there. And for some people, that will go very well. If you're a senior, if you're a saver, if you're locked into long-term low-yield investments or bonds, you're going to be totally screwed in this economy. Is that something that Republicans need to push back against, Vish? I mean, we've seen this fight throughout the 90s and early 2000s where Democrats were saying government needs to get bigger and Republicans were saying government needs to get smaller. Well, we've sort of lost that battle. Government continues to get bigger and bigger even when Republicans win elections. And so now you've got kind of these, Gavin Waxian populist Republicans who are saying enough with the fight over whether or not it's going to get bigger or smaller. Let's talk about what government should be doing.
Yes.
And let's direct the government's actions to the benefit of our people, not, some distant desert abroad, not some new population of people that you're trying to import into the country. How do you think that divide in the right aligns with what we're likely to see from the left while they're in power with all this monetary policy?
I think it's never been clearer than now of, we have to use the government to take care of our people. The United States government seems to work for everyone great except actual Americans, right? And so and everybody notices that now. So now both the left and the right have to answer for that. Now, for the left, it's easy, right? okay, we'll make sure the government takes care of you guys, right? That's an easy promise to make. It's a tough one for us to make because we need to get over we have the dilemma of the freedom and security. We have to kind of figure out where we shift in that spectrum to make it to still have a viable coalition to win on a large scale and still like deliver on our promises, right? And so I think that there is a bright future for folks on the right who are willing to go out there and say, hey, I'm not here to make a small government argument. I'm here to tell you what I can get government to do for you, right? And this is what if I'm there, this is how the government is going to interact with your life. This is what's going to be provided. That's all people want to hear. Let's give it to them.
And if that is the political realignment that we're facing, by our hand or not, we would almost need that to have a chance for a renewed right in states like California and New York. Traditional neo-libertarian Republican candidates aren't going to win statewide elections in New York and California, but different types of candidates, inspiring candidates, just might have the chance, and we know a few of them who are running for governor in each of your states. Ginger, we are good friends with Ambassador Rick Grinnell. We are inspired by his, I think, very positive view of what California can be. We don't have any inside information to know whether he's going to seek statewide office, but we've certainly both encouraged him to run for governor. And if a guy like Rick Grinnell was a candidate for governor in your home state, how could he have the type of a chance that maybe a traditional Republican wouldn't?
One, I think Rick he has his longstanding, he has his own character, and people are just drawn to that too, right? And I think that because California is so different in the spectrum of pockets and what kind of, really blue and really red, but I think what Rick believes in and believes government should be and how California should and could thrive, he will capture, people that aren't looking for red or blue. They just want better. And they've been locked down. And like I said, I think the mental health in California has got to be a disaster because we don't even have winters. I'm sure
it's probably always been. When was the mental health of California good? I mean, you guys sort of went from like the Rodney King riot straight into like kind of OJ and then, a lot of stuff.
But I mean, that's the media part of it, right?
Okay.
If you're a Californian, right? How many Californians, move for a reason other than taxes and government, right? It's not because it's too sunny out. Like, there are too many days I was distracted by how many things I could actually do. I was having such a good time. I just had to get out, And I still, I know that being in Florida, they definitely empathized in a way that I didn't expect when I first moved there. Like, I'm sorry, we'll save you. We got you. I was like, guys, California's wonderful. Have you been? It's phenomenal. So I think Rick could definitely make it the best version of itself. I hope that that's something in the future.
Not red or blue, but better. Yeah. If there's going to be an opportunity for Republican victories in these non-traditional places like California and New York, the turnaround artist candidate has to be thematically present. I think, that's what Ginger lays out. Can Lee Zeldin be a turnaround artist as a Republican candidate in New York?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure he's hearing it from his constituents that like something needs to be turned around now. He represents that Long Island, Suffolk County, Long Island region. And I can tell you, there are very few people that I've seen that are so livid about the lockdowns than like Long Islanders, right? That they're like marching they are literally driving trucks of, like by the thousands up and down, the Long Island Expressway with their flags waving, saying like, let us free, let my people go, right? And Lee is also Jewish, and that's definitely going to help him in New York, right? And so that's and not only that, he has a brand where he's seen as like a qualified, a congressman with decorum, all of that. But he still was
shots fired.
Yeah, but
so Trump always calls him brilliant lawyer Lee Zeldin.
Yeah, well, no, exactly, and then so highly qualified, right? Yeah. That's not a question either. So, and he was there in that fight during impeachment, front and center with you and Lee Stefanik, and so I think that on that front, for Northern New York, what he's already done and showed that he was on the side of the president. That's going to help him up there. in the Long Island region, I know those folks know that Lee's on their side, and there's a ton of votes out there that they need to win. It's really just how many votes he can swing in New York City that can, bring him over the edge, and that's where he needs. Is there any
political question in New York City that's going to matter more in this race than open or closed?
I think that I don't think that no, that's going to be the most. That's going to be the biggest question.
What about the defund the police issue? I heard that from so many New Yorkers over the last 24 hours that this is central to their safety, their quality of life. Does that rise to a top 2 or 3 issue?
Absolutely. I mean, the NYPD is just, if you consider it, a huge employer out here, right? So that, just on that level, you're talking about defunding the police. Well, what does that mean? My job goes, and and not only that, these folks again can't even live in the city. Because the housing situation here and the real estate prices, rent and everything out of control. So you already got pissed off folks driving in 2 hours to police this place that doesn't appreciate you, and then they're gonna turn around and say you don't even deserve this job. We hate you. Get out of here. It's that, and then not only that, the normal folks on the streets are now. They're able to see it now, right? The degradation of the city. Even all the way to Staten Island. I've been living on my block for about 20 years. Never been a single piece of graffiti in my neighborhood until 2020 during the pandemic. And so that is when it was visible to me the direction that this is going in a outer skirt borough that has great police protection and all that. Still, we're dealing with that problem. Imagine what they're dealing with out here, where it's just lawless and under de Blasio's full control. So I think that defund the police is probably the number 2 issue if lockdowns are number 1.
Ginger, you take that neighborhood experience that Vish describes of discord and disruption, unlike what had been seen before. And then you kind of scale that to the racial discord and social discord that the country has gone through, dovetailing with this pandemic, whether it was the George Floyd riots or January 6th. You saw people get out and do things that I don't think normal Americans would want to do to each other. I don't think this is a country where we have an innate desire to physically harm one another or burn each other's houses down or businesses down. I've always found this to be a very loving country. And we've talked often about how just the lockdown mentality has had this mental health effect that you referenced earlier in the show. And it's made what might be otherwise very resolvable things more difficult to resolve.
Yeah, I mean, I see it from, especially I'd say my closest friends in LA in California, where they were shut down, the hardest. And you saw so many, riots popping up, even in, places like Rodeo Drive or Santa Monica that are known to be the family, friendly kind of places that you show off when you bring your friends to Hollywood, and those just being disintegrated, and it being, more than just the cost, but truly the emotional damage that was going on. And it is because I think a lot of it had to do with there was just so much hatred built up. There's a lot of the mental health that wasn't being talked about because, if you lock people up, especially when, maybe I'm not giving California a free pass, but when we're not used to winters, we don't know what to do. So that's already going to be harder. And then you have, tack on the moms that now have to homeschool, tack on the kids that can't see their friends. It's almost inhumane how you can't socialize. And then the only way you could socialize was to go riot. Then you had a free pass. You could go outside. You could do whatever, So that was, it's sad. It's hard. And I just think that was.
Well, let's hope that if the lockdown mentality made those grievances more acute, that as we start to open up and get vaccinated as a country, that maybe we will extend more kindness and affection and understanding and appreciation to each other on all sides. I'm here for that if we can do that. So in the post-lockdown world, Vish, you got to give me a post-lockdown experience that you're dying to have. Maybe it's a place you're dying to go get an adult beverage. Maybe it is a meal you want to go eat. Maybe it's a show you want to go see, a concert. What is the Vish Burra can't wait till this pandemic is in the rear view and I can go and have this experience.
So I'm not actually I haven't traveled internationally much, so I definitely want to change that. And one of the experiences that I'm dying to get done, especially in the post-pandemic world, I see is extra appealing now, is I used to be a dancer, jazz, tap, and ballet, right? And so I love dancing. What I want to do is go to Ibiza and just party, like with suffocating with people all over me and dancing the night away, sweating everywhere, breathing heavy. And like I got 10 people in my, 1 inch vicinity. That's the experience that I want.
You want the hot, sweaty Vish Burra dancing your tail off. You know what, Ginger, I'm going to ask you the same question, and I know the answer is already Coachella.
Wow. Well, me and Bish agree on a lot of things. That'd be the Flume tent. So,
Gotcha.
I like a little more elbow room. But yeah, I think it is interesting to think about. I think the music festival, I don't know that it'll ever really go back to what it was, or it might bounce exactly back, just way harder, right? Because we have been totally isolated in different ways. So I would say, yeah, some sort of musical festival, but definitely abroad. I want to go see my friends and friends. They've had 1 hour a day, for the past year to go outside. Just want to have a good time, want to go abroad.
And now, is there something that we have to eulogize in your life? A place you loved to go to eat, an experience you love to have that might not be there anymore? I'll tell you, there's a restaurant right down the road from my parents' place in Seaside, Florida, 723 Bravo. It was started by some veterans. Nice place on where you could get a cheeseburger and a beer. And as a consequence of the pandemic environment, they closed and will not reopen. And our closure in Florida was so much more manageable than in other parts of the country. Is there a place that you'll really miss?
I am going to I'm actually very, very worried about my casino experiences. I love casinos, and I love playing poker, blackjack, roulette, all that stuff. I am very concerned about what my casino experiences are going to be like. I don't see it bouncing back in a way that is going to be what it used to be. I mean, they were already running through the place, banning smoking cigarettes on the floor, which I despise. I will not go to any casino that doesn't allow smoking cigarettes on the floor. So,
well, that's disgusting. What are you looking? What are you looking at with some sadness that might be different, or we might not get back, Ginger?
I think the experiential dining, right? A lot of these big Michelin chefs, the Nakazawas of the world, they weren't able to practice their art, their craft for so long, and it's going to look different and probably feel different. So I am very excited for it, though. I think it'll be coming back full swinging with new, edgy, exciting twists on it. So I'm ready for the experience dining.
Well, this has been an experience here at the New York Young Republican Club Clubhouse. I'm proud to be a donor here. I know my colleague Elise Stefanik is a donor here. I know Lee Zeldin supports the club. We got some great New Yorkers, and you know what? You folks are behind enemy lines in this city. You are the fire keepers for America First. And you know what? There are times in Congress I feel like I'm behind enemy lines up there, having to ensure that we've got reason for hope and inspiration for the entire MAGA nation, and that we continue to stand up for the greatest country that's ever existed. So we are now at the conclusion of our time. We can actually take the rope off of Gavin Wax. He's back in the president's office. We can take the gag out of his mouth, and we'll be able to hand the Waxcast back to Gavin in good form. Thank you to my beautiful fiance, Ginger Lucky, one of my very best friends, Vish Burra. We'll chat again soon.
Thanks, Pat.